to Let's Talk to Animals. My name is Shannon Cutts. I'm an animal intuitive and sensitive with animallovelanguages.com. This is, of course, Pearl Cutts, my 23-year-old feathered sidekick and soul bird. He's been with me since he was 5 weeks old, and he never misses an episode. Luckily, he usually only screams when I'm talking, and there won't be a lot of that in this podcast. Special treat for everyone who's watching the video portion today is my red-footed tortoise, Malty, is joining us. We've had a little unexpected cold spurt here, and so she's indoors today looking for anything she can eat. So just thought I would bring her on for just a quick, brief minute. And most importantly, today we have Amy Williams DeLong. She is joining us to talk about all things complementary pet wellness and health, and kind of bridging the gap between, what animal communication has to offer, and then where do we go once we have information from our animals about what they want, what they need, maybe what's missing in their lives, or what could enhance their lives, could make it even better. And so that's really what we're going to be talking about today. Amy, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thanks so much for donating your time to be with us today.
Well, I am really happy to be here, and so thanks for having me too.
Delighted.
I love talking about this stuff.
Well, it's, because it's, it can be hard to wrap our minds around, there's a lot of options out there when we're looking at, not just pets that have maybe health issues going on, or, maybe are just in their, so-called golden years, if you will, which aren't always as golden as we would hope they would be. And, just trying to maximize quality of life, address issues, or just enhance overall wellness. Let's talk about, we've got a good baseline of health going, and then how do we take that to the next level? Feel even better, have even more energy, or in the case of over excitable pets, maybe a little less energy, and just seeking, finding balance. And so, as you and I have talked before we actually jumped on the podcast here today, and the blogcast for those of you who are watching on video, Let's Talk to Animals began as a way to de-woo and demystify animal communication. And now in season 2, we're really branching out and taking a look at that ongoing conversation that happens between intuitive healers, animal communicators, pet whisperers, if you will, those who are working with animals that don't have pet parents right now, maybe rescue animals in shelter, maybe working animals, and seeking other ways to ease the issues life can bring up in us. Whether, speaking of you and I were just talking about our dachshund, Flash Gordon has joined us as well. So we have a full house today on this side. Both emotional issues, behavioral issues, health issues, and overall quality of life issues. And so, where I really wanted to start with you is to talk about, kind of how your path began. There's so many different options out there. It can feel overwhelming when we're just starting to learn. And so kind of what shaped your path into, into where it has evolved to today, the work that you do. Just kind of how did you get started,
My journey is really quite progressive. I mean, when I was in my 20s, I was already doing intuitive work, realizing that I was an empath and dealing with all that with people. But it was when I had my dog, Jazz, a border collie, and we were doing just regular training, working on good canine, good citizenship, stuff like that. And he was maybe a year. We came around the corner in a typical training, something we'd done forever. And there was a bulldog sitting right across the room from, not even the room, the entryway, just being a bulldog, all that panting and noise.
Yeah.
Dad went berserk. He just went over the top, like at the end of the leash, and going, roar, 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 and took me totally by surprise, because I'd never seen that out of him before. I mean, he's very friendly. We'd had foster dogs, everything. So, I mean, there was no dog reactivity, but the instructor decided to take that and teach Jazz what was appropriate. And she took him over and we put him into a down, and then it was to on his side. And then the bulldog mom was to walk her dog around in circles while Jazz was laying there. And as he like lays there and he's like looking at me and she's not letting him up, it's stay, putting her hand on him. And he stayed. It just tore my heart apart because he's looking at me like, help me. And I didn't have the confidence or the courage to speak up against the instructor in that class at that time. And, you know, part of me is going like, well, I'm newer at training. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe, you know, she's the expert, so she should know. And at the end of it, you know, when he stopped trying to resist, you know, she finally, you know, okay, we're done. And she finally let him up. And then the rest of the class, we could walk by the dog like this, no reaction. He would look away and she was like, you know, oh yeah, he really got it. He learned, you know, that's what we wanted him to learn. And the irony is that, excuse me, Cesar Millan was like just new to TV at the time.
Gotcha.
And the class is like, wow, you're like the dog whisperer, you know? And so it was forceful to Jazz, right? It was against his will. It was breaking his spirit. That was kind of the goal she had, I think. But after that, he was leash aggressive. We would come into the class, he'd see other dogs. So it was like, what he really learned was that the best defense is a good offense. So now I had a whole new problem to work with. And with Border Collie Speedy's fast reflexes, you know, he could lock on to something at the end of the block. And there we are. So what do I do? And so that led me to exploring other options. I kept training. I trained there a couple times. I'm like, yeah, no, we're just done with this. And at the time, you know, this is, oh dear, over 15 years ago now, you know, the training options weren't always so positive like they are now. They were still, there was some, but it was more on that traditional side. But I just felt like this isn't right. And there's gotta be something. And, you know, I had a mindfulness practice. I was already in that energy world and things. And I just, you know, kind of put it out there, right? You pray about it. Like, where do I go? What show me? And Tellington T-Touch showed up. And there happened to have been a class in my city. And so we took it and it was like coming home to me. It was like a combination of mindfulness with intention, learning to connect and create relationship with your animals, with any animal, really, not just your own. And so it was like just coming home. And I remember thinking at the time, like when Oprah Winfrey puts this on her television show, I want to be a part of it, you know, and she never got there with T-Touch, but it's a movement that I think is just so awesome. And at the time, as you kind of tell, 15 years ago, there wasn't the options, right? There are today in terms of working with animals. You know, all of these methods have been kind of transposed into working with animals. T-Touch wasn't. That started with animals first, but so that's how and then that just evolved, right? So we started on that path, and then Healing Touch came into town, and I'd already been doing energy work. So I'm like, well, that's just a perfect fit. So I was actually doing both programs at the same time. It was a little, you know, it was a little crazy, but they fit so well together.
Yes.
That it worked. And I had, you know, background, so it wasn't totally new to me. And then I stayed with that. I had the aromatherapy piece. You know, another side note, I had a friend that was a nurse that had gone through a course for her nursing. So she was she did that. She'd come back from a training and tell me what she learned. And I would learn all these things from her. And what was really interesting is I never had, at that, again, we're over 20 years ago with that, hadn't thought about using them with animals at that time. I was fostering animals. Or fostering dogs. I had my own. And by the time I saw like, oh, here's a course that includes using oils with animals, I'm like, yes, this is awesome. Like, it was sort of like, the lights go on, like, why didn't I think of that? But in that class, she contradicted almost all of the safety pieces that I had learned from my friend, which, then I come from the T-touch side, right? We're going to respect. We have a relationship. Why would I blow off what I know to be true about oils just because it's an animal? So at that point, I didn't have the time to commit to a certification, but I did, I'm a lifelong learner. I love doing research.
Yeah.
It's a creative rabbit hole for me.
Yeah.
So I would learn on my own until eventually I had the time to commit to the certification program. And then went through all of that as well, because that was like in over 300 hours now programmed to do that.
Yeah.
So, and all along the way, these things I was working with rescues, running spay-neuter clinics, had fosters, had friends with animals, right? So just bit by bit, I'm just, hey, let's try this. Let's try this. Let's try this. It's all, and I think, maybe you found this too, that it's just a lot of trial and error. It's a lot of, hey, let's try this and see what happens. Doing it safely, doing it smart, doing
Absolutely.
it respectfully, right? But I think that's a lot of, experience is a great teacher. So,
boy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Boy, isn't it? Yes. Yes.
So, so like, what else did I think of? I mean, along the way, well, I guess that's how I got started, right? Was with Jazz. And, he passed a year and a half ago. And he was like one of the soul, that soul dog that's still with me.
Yeah.
And it was so hard to write about that story, while I've been doing this work for over 15 years, I've just in the last few years gone online with it. And so with the online and writing so many more things where I didn't have to before, I'm starting to talk about these things. And then Jazz is in those golden years. And, it's like I try to write an email and I would cry for an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was at that time that I really stepped back and just saw like, man, I never, ever would have thought our journey where it started would have led me here.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
I hear you in my heart. I'm so resonating. So often it's such a privilege to make these connects each week with so many gifted professionals who adore animals. And so often and people, many animals come with people attached. And so that's a big myth. You get into this work and you think, I just want to work with animals. And gosh, there are people attached to almost all of them. And,
yes.
But you realize, when we start kind of digging back a little bit into our history, how did we end up here? How did that happen? What were the steps that the major aha moments and key intersections and heart relationships? And usually you find one or two animals have really called us into this work. There's been a couple of really special animals along the way who maybe have even gone through a rather significant amount of hardship themselves, such as your Jazz, where, having to go through that initial toxic and emotionally traumatizing experience, but then being, the way I look at it is, there was a willingness to engage. There was a willingness to show up at the training camp. He also was in to start this journey with you, you know, and how, and it really opens our hearts even more to realize how giving and generous the animals in our lives are. And so often I find that, you know, people are willing to try new things, to do new things for their animals that they wouldn't even necessarily exert the energy to do for their own selves, on their own behalf. And I love what you say about, you know, because there's so much. I downloaded your essential oils. You have 2 different free tools. There's one for like how to use essential oils safely with pets and diffusers. And I actually bought the diffuser you recommended for our dog. Yeah. And then you have another one about safety concerns with essential oils. And you talk a lot about in your weekly newsletters, which I highly encourage everyone to sign up for, amywilliamsdelong.com. Just go and sign up and download those 2 tools and start following along, because there is so much misinformation and there's so much very black or white information that's out there online. I mean, it really occurs to me as I'm listening to you, 15 years ago, maybe these things were happening, but we didn't have the connectivity that we did today. We didn't have the access to the World Wide Web where anybody and everybody can decide that they're an expert in something and post something saying, never use this with cats, or only do it this way with dogs, or birds can't tolerate essential oils, or aromatherapy is only this, or, you know, I love learning more myself, only enough usually to refer out with my animal communication clients, because, you know, we're a team. Like there's going to be people who are called to this specialty or that specialty. And then there's going to be those that bridge, and let's work together. Let's use one another's talents and gifts. And, you know, it's no different really than even a Western medicine. And even those are mostly people medications that were probably initially tested on animals, then used for people. And now we're diluting them back to use for animals again. And it's like, whoa, like what about this situation makes any sense at all? Never mind the ethics of it. But it's like to take a look at the whole plant, to take a look at the whole, you know, all the components of it, to realize that no matter what we're taking or trying, we're treating or enhancing the well-being of a unique individual. And we cannot take a cookie cutter approach, which is why it's so easy. If something doesn't work the way we think it does, or work the way maybe our practitioner says it has worked with other animals, and we think, oh, that doesn't work with my animal. It's like, not necessarily. So can you talk a little bit about that? Because I am, you know, often I will receive intuitive data from one of my animal clients that indicates that they could benefit from CBD or essential oils or aromatherapy as a whole, or body work, or some kind of training program that isn't the, you know, submission versus aggression kind of model. And, you know, and so I'm referring out and, you know, when you intake a new animal client and they're human, you know, kind of how does that look in the beginning? Can you give people who are listening kind of an idea of what to expect, or what feels right? How do you like to work with people and their pets to find the right solution for them, even if it takes a bit to get there?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot in that question.
I'm sorry. I have this, I'm also kind of like down the rabbit hole kind of researcher, and it can really, sometimes I do see my guests looking at me like, can you break that down a little bit? Like, really?
Well, I'm right there with you. I mean, if we had 4 hours.
Right. Trust me, I am totally watching the clock for you. So, I know you have another appointment.
Okay. Well, to start with, I totally like care team, right? You need a holistic care team. In fact, I just wrote, it's going out this week, an email about that.
Fantastic.
My oldest dog is 13, almost 14, 80 pounds, arthritic, you know, we're losing the rear legs. And we got the acupuncture and Chinese herbs and a chiropractor and a massage therapist and essential oils and energy healing. And literally, like within the last month, we've had to use them all to keep him moving. and it becomes a quality of life, right? At this point, because I say, healing is not about, it's not always about a cure. It's about better. Can we, sometimes we can cure things and things go away, but when I work with people, it's like, to me, it's always progress, not perfection. If you have this idea in your head that this is going to completely go away, you may be disappointed. I don't know, because I don't have all the answers, but the animals do, right? So when I work one-on-one with people, I like to start with what I call a clarity session. To me, it's kind of a recon mission. So animal communication for me is very kinesthetic, right? Sometimes I'll get words. I often get images, but it's very kinesthetic, where I'm feeling it. And then I have to interpret that, right? So I will feel how they're feeling, whether it's behavior or physical, or and towards the end of life, right? How are they feeling about a situation? Anxiety, what is the anxiety? Where is it coming from? Because anxiety, totally what you're saying. People will say, oh, this oil is calming, give them that. Well, anxiety can look like restless pacing, hyperactivity. Anxiety can look like shut down, hiding in a corner, trembling in the bathroom. So totally that they're all unique. And I have this actually written down here because I forget always how to say it, but it's necessary to understand the nature of the patient, the nature of the disease or the situation, and the nature of the remedy that you want to use. And so I always approach that very intuitively, vibrationally as well, then plus the science side, because I do have a degree in exercise physiology and I work alongside veterinarians. So science is important to me too. I love when the science backs the intuitive, right? And they come together. But I've learned to trust the feeling over my head. Like I'll say, you're saying the right words here, but it doesn't feel right to me.
Right.
I'm going to trust what it feels like. Another one of those experienced teachers. So if I'm working one-on-one and I do this session, my goal is to come out of it saying they're feeling like this, physically, emotionally, whatever, and to get to the underlying cause. And I have enough tools and experience to say, I think this, let's do this. Let's start here. Let's try this, and it also depends on where they live, because not everybody has access to a chiropractor or an acupuncturist, and their budget. There's things that I say, okay, do this at home, get back to me. There's things that I can, hold your hand if you want to do that. So there's like a lot of different levels of care is the way I look at it. I'm going to be here, whether it's every week, every month, or every 6 months that you want support. And then I totally do refer out to other people. I know enough about all these other expertises to say, this is where I stop, go here, so I don't know, does that kind of answer?
It really does. And, and it also wraps in, of course, you landed on, answered the question that I was going to ask next, which is, how does the animal communication piece fit in? Because, whether we realize that we're doing it or not, or whether we hang out a shingle and we call ourselves an animal communicator or not, that which you speak is the feeling versus the thinking, and learning to use both tools and saying, I don't necessarily need to know how or why I feel that this particular, textbook verified pathway may not be right for this individual animal that I am working with right now. It's not about needing to know why or how exactly. It's about learning to tune in and receive all the information through all the different pathways that it comes through, and recognizing, there are all kinds of ways to communicate with animals, and there are all kinds of benefits from that, and there's all kinds of things that we can do with what we receive. And so it's not about, trying to, again, the team approach, and realizing, for instance, I don't have to be an expert in aromatherapy to receive information from an animal that indicates that that might be something that would benefit them. The intuition, right. The animal can tell me. I mean, sometimes I'm also very kinesthetic like you are. And so sometimes I'll even get a sense of, I'm trying to smell something that would calm me down. I'm trying, so many animals are very sensory. And so these are, and there's so many smells that would be available to them if they were living their wild lives that are right. simply not available to them living in our sanitized, ultra modern, temperature controlled indoor plumbing. I mean, we want to get out of the bathroom. Our dog wants to go in because that's where it smells the best, and there's the most interesting things going on. So it's like we have to realize that some of this sensory craving is simple sensory craving, needing to feel more alive and remember their roots. I know that sounds super cheesy, and then I just put it on the internet, but I mean, that it really, there is something to be said for that. Now, the next question I had for you is, of course, now we do have this wonderful connectivity, and there are people all over the world, and it doesn't matter how many aromatherapy and complementary holistic healing practitioners there will never be enough to meet the need, and there will never be enough in the local area where the people that need it live. So how do you work online with people? Is that an area where animal communication becomes a little more prominent as well?
Well, as you know, energy doesn't need the internet, right?
No, it doesn't.
It's kind of, a lot of people come to me, and what you're saying and listening, and what Western medicine does. A lot of the people that show up with me have tried Western medicine and it's not working. So I usually don't have to convince them that it may not be the best path for their animal. But that said, a lot of them don't understand how this works. Somebody referred them, or they've heard about how does this work. And when I explain that, from the clarity session is the nice place to start. I say it's like remote, but I don't use the internet. And if you say if it's psychic connection, I said that may sound a little woo-woo, but there's a lot of science that can support. We're all energy, so I'm able to connect on an energetic level. And so I can do it across the room. I mean, any of us, right? Communication, healing, when we're connecting energetically, we can do it across the room, across the pasture, across town, across state, across country, across the world. It doesn't matter for that. I think what's harder is connecting with the people when there's a 6-8 hour time change.
That is challenging. Yes, it is.
That's the bigger challenge from my perspective. But then also I've done Zoom tea touch session where I have my laptop and we're sitting on the ground and my dog, demoing on my dog, and this is how you do it, and just get creative with how to do it. I've made demo videos, so I have the YouTube channel that has videos and things like that on it. For the tea touch, but also, when it comes to aromatherapy, one of the things that, I could plant my soapbox on is the idea of a this for that cookie cutter thing, right? That use it, and because it worked for my dog, you should, use this, it worked great. And I've seen a lot of animals, again, the ones that come, a lot of them that come to me, well, that didn't work. My dog's running from the oils, something like that, okay, let's back this up. Blends that are what I find, some of these blends that have 10, 20 oils in them are just too much. And, or they're using them straight and not diluting them enough. And then of course you see on the internet, dilute based on weight, dilute if they're this many pounds, if they're that, and I'm to me, it's I just can't wrap my brain around why, if you work with animals and they're sensitive, why does weight matter? how sensitive is that horse? Their field is huge. They're a prey animal. They're going to feel and sense things just like deer, you know? Why would I give them way more just because they weight way more? That didn't sound right. Why would I use more essential oil because they weigh more in pounds or kilograms or whatever, right? I mean, it's, to me, it's what is their sensitivity? Because I can work with an 80-pound German Shepherd or a 10-pound Chihuahua, and I might give that Shepherd less than the Chihuahua because they're a search and rescue dog.
Yeah.
They're so trained, and that nose is so sensitive, right? So really looking at the individual, and then like looking at what exactly are the symptoms of that individual, and matching the remedy or the modality to them.
Yes. Which is why it is helpful that, you know, circling back to have that team in place. Here's another kind of an interesting angle that has come up. And I'll just be transparent and use our family as an example. You know, I was sharing before we got on today about, you know, some of the challenges we're having with our dog and needing to kind of push the boundary out farther beyond what Western veterinary medicine is offering, and trying different modalities. Well, as it turns out, sorry, he's chatty today.
I have one too, but
okay,
upstairs, because I would
gotcha.
If it's Quaker parrot, I'd never hear it.
Oh, yeah, it would be a nonstop bird song, wouldn't it? Nonstop bird song. Come here, my love. So you know, we have a wonderful acupuncture veterinary rehab clinic here that also works with essential oils and Chinese herbs. So in our particular case, my father passed several months ago, and what started his serious health problems, the progression, we think, were a course of Chinese herbs. And so when the holistic vet prescribed Chinese herbs for our dog, my mother and I both kind of went into this constricted space where we're just afraid of them because of a completely unrelated incident. And so I guess the reason I even wanted to share that, maybe it'll help the question make more sense. And is there any correlation between how open the animal's person is to some of the different modalities that you might feel are beneficial with the animal, as in, you know, did our dachshund end up having a bad reaction to those herbs, which he did? Was it because they genuinely didn't work with his system, or could it have possibly been because he was picking up our intense anxiety around using them with him? Does that make sense? I know it's a little bit of but it's like,
both.
Yeah, okay.
Both, I've seen both. I mean, definitely us as empaths, that's how animals are. They live their life. Their instinct is empath, right? It's totally feelers in the environment to keep them alive. Mm-hmm. So if we get really worried, and I don't know how many people, you probably have this too, like, I don't want to talk to them about, like, I'm sad they're leaving. I don't want them to feel my sad. I'm like, you can't help it. Stop it. Mm-hmm. You know, be sad with him. Don't you think he's sad? You know, they're going to feel it no matter what. So there is that. I mean, there's both of those. It cannot resonate. You know, muscle testing is a way, you know, I use, or dowsing. I will do both to sometimes test what's accurate. What I know about Chinese herbs is they're incredibly powerful.
Yes.
So you need to know, I mean, have somebody that you really trust, because, you know, my vet who does the herbs, I don't know how, 20 plus years, somebody that just came out of school, you know, if that's all I had, I would try it, but I would be like asking questions. I'd be doing my research on that. I still do. I mean, I got a new one. What does this herb do? What is its intention? Why are we using it? Look at all those pieces, you know, and adjusting a dose again, you know, for the animal. And unfortunately, I see a lot of veterinarians that have acupuncture treatment or certification still using it with a Western mindset. They're not really looking at it from the whole Chinese big picture, looking at it that way. They still have their kind of fix it, like, you have pain here, so we should use these points. Not necessarily looking at all of what's happening with the animal and how they interrelate. So again, that's where experience, and I certainly don't intend to give veterinarians a bad rap. They're the family practice person who has to deal with absolutely everything.
Yeah.
They don't have the time. And the herbs are a separate certification for veterinarians. So not all of, and that's more extensive than just doing acupuncture. So like for your father, they would have likely been to an acupuncturist who was trained in the whole package, right? And I'm sorry to hear about that experience.
It was just, but it's like all of those experiences, whether we know why or not, they can shape us. And I mean, here's another great example. We recently installed a dog door, and our dachshund has been loving going through it, but my mom was really nervous because all of our dachshunds have had back problems. And so when I tuned in, I guess it kind of helps here to have a professional animal communicator in the family. So I tuned into him and I asked, how do you like the new dog door? And he was funny. He was like, well, I really like it. I can go in and I can go out, and I can go in and I can go out, and I can go in. And I was like, yeah, I get the point. And he's like, but my mom doesn't like it. So I had to go back to my mom and say, he's really enjoying going in and out, but he says, you don't like the dog door. And she's like, well, I love the dog door. And I said, well, he doesn't think you do. And that's why he's hesitant to use it. And as soon as I said, just look at him and just say, I love the dog door. I just want to make sure that you're comfortable going through it. And so he, now it's cleared up, but it's like, he was sensing her anxiety and interpreting that in his sensory way as there's something not right or not safe about that dog door.
Yeah.
So I better be careful and still bark at the door to be let out rather than go through it, even though she just spent $1,000 to put this wonderful high-tech dog door in just for him, so it's like all of these different things. And I guess, the point of course, this is such a rich topic and there's so many things to learn. I have two final questions. One is just, what do you recommend for pet parents who are kind of in crisis mode and they just want to, it's like their animal's not doing well, they're in desperation mode and they just want to try everything at once versus let's just do it all. Versus, should we, at the risk that maybe something, you won't try the one thing that works, or if you try it all at once, maybe at least something will work versus, let's just take a deep breath, that kind of, and then of course, I know you've got a thing at 3, or well, that's when we were pre-recording in this anyway. And so I want to be respectful, but I do want you to tell everyone how they can reach you and, anything special that you would like to invite them to participate in or sign up for or, learn about. Okay. So that's
okay. So, wait, what?
The first question was, I know, I'm sorry. I keep doing this to you because I've just got 1,000 questions.
Oh, wait, it was what to tell, I got it. What to tell people that are like in crisis mode. So the only time I would say like you throw everything at it, and I never really encourage that. But the only time when people want to do it and I say, go ahead, is like, you got nothing to lose because they have more of a terminal situation, right? So it doesn't look good, and to be really blunt, you're probably going to lose them anyway. So why not try it all? But generally speaking, I'm like, no, let's do one thing at a time, because if you don't know what works.
Yeah.
Or what doesn't work. If I give 3, if I get an herb and a remedy and an oil all at the same time and we get better, I don't know which one it is. So, and some things you can do like parallel, but even just waiting 3 days, it's like nutrition, right? I don't want to change everything up at the same time.
Yeah.
Do little steps. So like, start something, maybe wait a week or 3 days. It just depends. I mean, oils are a little different because they're going to evaporate and it's a short-term thing. Adding herbs into the mix, can take a little bit longer. And so it really depends on what method. And I mean, you throw acupuncture in and, so I'd say let's just do one thing at a time, but that doesn't mean you have to wait a month to start something else.
That's good to know.
It just depends. I think, the biggest thing is anything nutritional and dietary can take up to 6 weeks. I mean, it can take 6 to 12 weeks to see a difference. My experience with Chinese herbs is it's been less than that. But if you don't see a change, you don't say, oh, it doesn't work after 3 weeks.
Yeah.
CBD is one that can be really effective for pain and anxiety, but they're not all created equal. The labels aren't the same. You have to find the product and the dosage for your animal. So that can be a lot of trial and error. And I'm going to say, so the other thing I do want to say about essential oils is that I really, along this whole line of being respectful, I like them to self-select. Like you say, let me get feedback from my animal, or what do they like or what don't they like? And simply by offering a bottle with the cap on it closed, just set it on the ground, see what they do. And there's a lot of subtleties to their responses. Like people will say, oh no, I didn't like that, and they'll make a judgment too quick. It's all really about being patient and really observing. I mean, when you step back to observe, it's a skill. It's hard when it's our own, because we're so connected, but some things are easier, but when it comes to cats and essential oils, that's one of those really controversial things. And I really don't there's few things that I say, just don't do it, but I like dried herbs for cats. And there's hydrosol.
I saw that on your websites and I was very intrigued by that.
It's just very cool. So one of my big things, I think, because what I see out there in the market, is a lot of essential oil users. And aromatherapy gets tied to candles, scents, essential oils. And I'm like, no. I mean, the essential oils are obviously a big part of it, but what carrier you use, there's hydrosols, there's the herbs, there's infused oils. There's a whole basket full in true aromatherapy. And when you look at it from that holistic perspective, right, we're still going to the underlying cause and matching the remedy to the patient, to our, little fur babies. Not just taking hey, what's good, this calming oil, use that.
Right.
And another thing on that note that is like the topical use and some of the dripping along the back. And that's another thing that just and I know people they get benefits, or they get, it works. So it's great. But when I look at it from an aromatherapy perspective, it's a tremendous waste of oils, because most likely those benefits came because they smelt it. Not because you lose a lot absorption through the skin and through the fur. You don't get as much benefit as inhalation, especially with animals. That's why it's aromatherapy, right? We're smelling it. So inhalation, hands down, is the most effective. It's the safest way to use with animals. There's a whole bunch of ways we can do it. A diffuser is not, it's a handy thing. And there's times where that's great, but there's times where it's not. I create like my holistic vet. She has aromatherapy inhalers in her pockets. So she walks into the room and there's a shy, scared dog. She can grab that plant, that one, and put the cover back on, and we're done with it. So it doesn't have to infuse the whole room. you know, people with sensitivities, oh, I don't want to smell
Right.
lavender. Lavender gets overused, you know, and so respecting other people's space and with scent. And so, I mean, we can, there's just so many different ways.
I know.
It drives me nuts when I'll see a social media thing about, do I put that in their food or do I put it on there topically? I'm like, how about just inhale it? That'll do the trick, you know. And unfortunately for some companies, inhaling uses a lot less oils.
It's a good point, isn't it?
Right.
It's a
and
good,
if you dilute them, like I can put, I don't have the bottles here, but if I put 1 to 2 drops in a 5 ml bottle that's like that big, that can last me a long time. It's safe to use. I can offer that bottle diluted to my dog to inhale, and he's asleep and he's got pain relief. And I didn't use 3 or 4 drops every 3 hours. Mm-hmm. You know,
mm-hmm. So the marketing model, maybe it's not working along the same pathway as the, that makes perfect sense.
So that, I guess that's one thing, is I don't sell oils, which makes me different in the market. My focus is education. It's on safety. It's making sure that you know what you're doing and you're doing it safely and respectfully with your animal. So whatever you're gonna, I have my opinion about the oil companies, and I have my favorites that I like to buy from, which are all small independent aromatherapy suppliers. But I will support you to use, you know, whatever you choose to use. So so with all that, I do have, as you mentioned, the diffuser, you know, the pet-friendly guide to diffusing essential oils that covers all the safety components around diffusing and how to do it and when you might not want to use a diffuser. And you can find that on my website at amywilliamsdelong.com. And then I do have like other foods, like I have that lists of what to use and what not to use. I have links to my blogs that have information.
A great blog. I highly recommend it. I'm already learning a ton.
Well, this year my goal is to switch over to more videos too, which I think, you know, lends itself really well to our business. And so you can reach out to me through the website. There's a, you know, contact, email me through that. And I also have, if any of the listeners, watchers are on Facebook, I have an Animal Aromatherapy Made Easy Facebook group. Totally free. You can pop in, learn stuff, ask questions, just stalk it, leave when you're not paying attention, whatever you want to do with it. But I created it because it literally drove me crazy to not have unbiased, non-product selling resource online. One of my mentors has a Facebook group, but she doesn't take questions. So this is one where you can totally go in and put, in fact, every few weeks I'll say, hey, ask me anything, you know. So I really want people to do
what a great resource
and know what they're doing.
What a great resource. I've joined it. I encourage everyone who's listening or watching to reach out to Amy, to join the group, to, you know, if this is something that you're interested in, if you do have questions, you want to make sure that you're doing things safely and well for your animal and for yourself and for your family members who may have reactions of their own or sensitivities, you know, it's really worth looking at the bigger picture of how can these complementary modalities really support us all, and take a, you know, we're not supersizing anything. We're not going to take a page out of our culture, you know, big, you know, get more for less. It's sort of like, let's, you know, take a step back and say, let's use only what we need, and with full respect for the properties and powers of each one of these, you know, the beings that we're harvesting and we're harnessing to uplift us all. So we are now at the the exit moment for you, I just want to quickly say to everyone, because of course, those of you who joined us right at the beginning, Amy has another commitment starting 2 minutes ago. So I just want to say thank you so much for being a part. You can always find us at animallovelanguages.com. Just click on the podcast. You can re-listen as often as you want and find all of our other wonderful guests, Amy Williams DeLong.com. I will also put all this information in the show notes. Amy, it's been a privilege and an honor. Thank you for bearing with all of my questions and how complicated some of them are. And look forward to keeping in touch. And
well, thanks again for having me. I love this.
Absolutely.
I mean, we could do this every week. I love talking about
it. We sure could. And I definitely would love to have a follow-up. So, and I promise it won't be all about our dog. So,
some real life examples are helpful.
Yeah. Maybe we should do stuff. Flash would love it. He would be all in to be the star of the show for once instead of yet another supporting cast member. So, alrighty. Well, thank you to all of you who are watching and listening. If you enjoy what you've heard today, please do consider leaving us a 5 or a 50-star review. Send us your questions, comments. We love them. And be sure to bookmark and favorite. So as soon as a new episode pops up, you can be one of the first to listen. Okay. All of our love, and we will see you next week. Bye for now.
Bye.